The moment Liam Foster stepped into the Port of Stars diplomatic wing, he could feel the tension in the air. Officially, the Human Coalition and the Red Hell Alliance were valued trade partners. In reality, they were two species awkwardly navigating their first serious collaboration, one barter contract at a time. The recent trade disagreement over precious metal allocations had left both sides bristling, and the last thing Liam wanted was to make things worse. He adjusted his plain black jacket, a far cry from the formal military uniforms that filled the corridor. A few steps ahead, the station's Red Hell liaison, Verena, waited by the meeting chamber's entrance. Her long, violet-toned frame was poised, her snowy white eyes scanning a data slate. Her expression barely shifted when she noticed him, but her head tilted ever so slightly. "Mr. Foster," she said crisply, "I see you managed to arrive on time." Liam offered his most diplomatic smile. "I'd hate to keep you waiting." She didn't respond immediately, but the faintest smirk played at the corner of her mouth. "Good. Punctuality is a start. Let's hope your negotiation skills prove just as acceptable." Liam chuckled lightly. "You've already got me on my toes, Verena. I'll do my best to keep up." Verena turned without a word and strode into the chamber, her long coat trailing behind her. Liam followed, taking a moment to glance around the Port of Stars interior. The station was a sprawling hub of interstellar trade, a crossroads where a dozen species mingled. It was equal parts technological marvel and logistical headache, and Liam often wondered how it didn't collapse under its own complexity. He quickly refocused as Verena took her seat at the sleek, circular negotiation table. Joining them were two other human delegates, Sarah Ng and Eric Vasquez. Sarah, a logistics expert, gave Liam a brief nod before returning her attention to her tablet. Eric, a tall man with close-cropped hair and an easygoing demeanor, leaned back in his chair, his gaze flicking between Verena and Liam. "Well," Eric said casually, "this should be fun." "Fun's one way to put it," Liam replied, sitting across from Verena. "Let's hope we all leave this room with the same number of teeth we walked in with." Verena raised an eyebrow. "I wasn't aware that human diplomacy involved dental threats." "It doesn't," Sarah interjected smoothly. "Liam's just being colorful." "Colorful," Verena repeated, her tone flat. A curious word choice. The meeting began with the usual round of statements and counterstatements. The Red Hell delegation, represented by Verena and two of her aides, outlined their position on resource distribution. The humans countered with their own figures and proposals. It was a technical discussion, full of charts and projected yields, but Liam noticed how Verena's comments always carried a subtle edge. She had a way of phrasing things that made even the most reasonable human requests sound unreasonable. At one point, Liam leaned closer to Eric and whispered, "Is it just me, or is she doing this on purpose?" Eric smirked. "She's got that I'm smarter than you vibe down to an art. Watch and learn, rookie." Liam suppressed a laugh, grateful that the room's acoustics made it easy to keep their side conversation private. Still, he couldn't help but feel a strange mix of admiration and irritation toward Verena. She was sharp, too sharp at times, but there was something about her that drew him in. He found himself watching her more closely than he intended, noting how her white eyes didn't just look at things, they analyzed, calculated. By the time they took a break, Liam was ready to step outside for a moment and clear his head. Eric joined him, the two men standing near a wide observation window that offered a stunning view of the station's central dockyard. Ships of various shapes and sizes glided in and out, their hulls glinting under the artificial lights. "You're doing fine," Eric said, leaning against the railing. "She's tough, but you're holding your own." Liam let out a short laugh. "Barely. She's got this way of making me feel like an idiot without actually saying it." "Welcome to interstellar diplomacy," Eric replied. "Besides, I think she likes you." Liam shot him a skeptical look. "What makes you say that?" "Call it a hunch. You've got this energy about you. People tend to either love it or hate it. And she doesn't hate it." "Not exactly a ringing endorsement," Liam muttered, though he couldn't deny the flicker of curiosity the comment sparked. When the meeting resumed, Liam found himself trying to engage Verena more directly. He asked about her homeworld's resource management practices, showing genuine interest rather than focusing solely on the human perspective. At first, she seemed suspicious of his questions, but over time her responses became less curt and more detailed. Your methods are surprisingly efficient, Liam remarked at one point. I'd like to learn more about how you handle peak demand periods. Verena paused, studying him. You surprise me, Mr. Foster. Most humans don't bother asking about our methods unless they're looking for a tactical advantage. Maybe I'm just curious, he replied, leaning forward slightly. Sometimes understanding another perspective helps you find a better solution. For a moment, she said nothing. Then a hint of amusement flickered across her face. A rare quality in your species. Eric, seated nearby, caught Liam's eye and gave him an approving nod. Liam couldn't tell if his colleague was genuinely impressed or just enjoying the show, but he felt a small surge of confidence. Verena was a puzzle, and he was beginning to think he might actually enjoy figuring her out. As the session wound down, the two sides reached a tentative agreement on resource allocation. While it wasn't a perfect resolution, it was enough to prevent further tensions. The human delegates exchanged relieved glances, and even Verena's usual guarded expression seemed to relax slightly. Not bad for a day's work, Eric said as they left the chamber. Not bad at all, Liam agreed, his gaze drifting toward Verena. She was speaking quietly with one of her aides, her voice calm but firm. When she noticed Liam watching, she inclined her head in a subtle acknowledgement. You've got your work cut out for you, Eric said, following Liam's gaze. But you handled it well. Liam wasn't sure what lay ahead, but he felt a cautious sense of optimism. Verena wasn't just a challenge. She was an opportunity to bridge gaps and find common ground. And, if he was honest with himself, she was also someone he genuinely wanted to know better. Thanks, Liam said, turning back to Eric. I just hope I can keep up. Liam leaned back in his chair, running a hand through his unruly hair. The conference room on Deck 22 was dimly lit, with the soft hum of the station's air filters providing the only background noise. A table piled with datapads and old-fashioned notebooks dominated the space, and beside it sat Eric Vasquez, who had swapped his formal blazer for a well-worn hoodie. This place is starting to feel like home, Eric joked, nudging a datapad aside. We've been in here so long. I half expect them to start charging us rent. Liam smirked. I thought you liked the quiet. Isn't that why you took this assignment? Quiet, yes, Eric replied, pointing a stylus at him. Staring at trade routes and cargo manifests for 12 hours a day? Not exactly what I signed up for. Could be worse. At least we've got decent coffee. Liam gestured toward a small dispenser in the corner. Eric rolled his eyes. If you call that swill decent, you need to get out more. Before Liam could retort, the door slid open with a smooth hiss. Verena entered, her usual air of calm authority in place, though Liam noticed a faint tension in her shoulders. She carried a slim datapad, and her piercing white eyes darted between the two men before settling on Liam. You requested a meeting, she said without preamble. What do you need? Eric raised an eyebrow at Liam, clearly deferring to him. Liam stood and gestured for Verena to sit, though she remained standing for a moment, her gaze unyielding. We've been going through the station's new trade data, Liam began, and we noticed a few discrepancies in the shipment logs. We wanted to run them by you, get your perspective. Verena finally took the seat across from them, smoothing her long coat as she did. Discrepancies, you say? Do you have specific examples? Eric slid a datapad across the table. Right there. If you look at the cargo manifest for the last quarter, you'll see the total weight listed doesn't match the individual entries. We checked against the official Red Hell records and they show the same discrepancy. Verena frowned slightly, her pale hand scrolling through the data. This could be a simple clerical error, or something more intentional, Liam said carefully. We're not accusing anyone. We just want to understand why it's happening and how to prevent it. Verena glanced up, her expression unreadable. If there's been tampering, it could involve someone bypassing the standard tracking protocols. I'll need access to the station's core archive to investigate further. That's going to be tricky, Eric said. The core archive is under restricted access and we'll need to get clearance from the station's administrator. Not necessarily, Verena said, leaning forward. If we work together, we can cross-reference the public logs with our own Red Hell records. It will take time, but it's feasible. I suggest we start with the shipments from port A12. Those seem to show the most inconsistencies. Liam nodded. Sounds like a plan. Eric, can you pull those files? Already on it, Eric replied, tapping at his pad. As they delved deeper into the records, Verina's sharp mind became increasingly evident. She pointed out patterns Liam and Eric had missed, suggesting alternate ways to trace the shipments. Her knowledge of Red Hell trade protocols was invaluable, and though her tone remained curt, she occasionally slipped in a dry remark that made Eric chuckle. So, Eric said during a lull, how does a Red Hell envoy end up specializing in cargo manifests? I thought your people were all about high culture and science. Verina glanced at him, a hint of amusement in her eyes. A common misconception. While we do place a high value on art and research, logistics is the foundation of our society. Without efficient supply chains, our scientific and cultural pursuits would falter. Logistics is what keeps everything moving, Liam added. It's not glamorous, but it's vital. Exactly, Verina agreed. Those who underestimate the importance of logistics often find themselves at a disadvantage. I'm glad to see you recognize its value. Eric laughed. I think that's the closest thing to a compliment I've heard from you. Verina's lips quirked slightly. Don't let it go to your head. Hours passed as they combed through the data, the initial formality giving way to a more relaxed, collaborative atmosphere. At one point, Eric suggested taking a break, and the three of them ended up in the station's recreation lounge. It was a modest space with a few tables, a hollow projector showing interstellar news, and a vending unit stocked with snacks and beverages from various species. Liam grabbed a canister of something labeled Carina Spark and handed one to Eric. Ever tried this stuff? Nope, Eric said, popping the lid. But it can't be worse than the coffee. Verina observed them with mild curiosity. Your species has a remarkable tolerance for unknown substances. It's called adventure, Liam replied, taking a sip. You should try it. Verina raised an eyebrow. I prefer to know what I'm consuming. Suit yourself, Liam said, setting the canister down. But you're missing out. They returned to the conference room feeling somewhat recharged. As the hours stretched on, Eric started humming an old Earth tune under his breath while Verina remained focused on the data. Liam found himself watching her again, not just for her analytical skills, but for the subtle shifts in her expression, the way her hands moved deftly across the datapad. Liam, she said suddenly, snapping him out of his thoughts. Do you have experience with encryption algorithms? A bit, he said, leaning over to see her screen. What are you looking at? She gestured to a column of scrambled entries. These logs appear to be encrypted. If we can decipher them, we might find the source of the discrepancy. Eric looked over. I've got some decryption software that might help. Let me set it up. As Eric worked on his terminal, Liam and Verina continued their analysis. At one point, their hands brushed as they both reached for the same datapad. Verina quickly withdrew, but Liam caught the briefest flicker of something surprise, maybe in her white eyes. Sorry, he said, though he wasn't entirely sure why. It's fine, she replied, her voice neutral. Focus on the data. They worked late into the night, the tension between them shifting into something more cooperative. By the time they wrapped up their session, they had a clearer picture of where the discrepancies originated and a plan for how to address them. Eric, stifling a yawn, leaned back and stretched. Well, that was productive, he said. Now can we get some real food? I'm starving. Liam glanced at Verina. You in? She hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Very well. I could use a break. Together, the three of them headed toward the station's main dining deck, their earlier tension replaced by a growing sense of camaraderie. Though they still had plenty of work ahead, it felt like they were beginning to find their rhythm as a team. The air in the Carina market was thick with the sense of alien spices, fried street food, and something metallic that Liam couldn't quite place. It was a bustling maze of narrow aisles lined with makeshift stalls, each one piled high with goods from a dozen star systems. Vendors called out in a mix of languages, their voices rising above the low rumble of the crowd. Liam couldn't help but be reminded of an old Earth bazaar he'd visited years ago, though this one felt like it belonged to 100 different planets at once. Beside him, Verina walked with her usual composed stride. Her white eyes swept over the crowd, watchful but calm. She'd insisted on coming along after Liam mentioned he wanted to explore the market. This place is barely organized chaos, she remarked, her tone tinged with mild disapproval. How does anyone find anything here? That's part of the fun, Liam replied, dodging a small hovering bot that whizzed past. You never know what you'll stumble across. Verina gave him a sidelong glance. You humans and your fascination with randomness. It's inefficient. It's exciting, Liam countered. Come on, live a little. Her only response was a faint huff, but Liam caught the flicker of a smirk on her lips. It wasn't the first time he'd seen that subtle crack in her stoic exterior, and each time it made his own smile a little wider. They wandered deeper into the market, past stalls selling crystalline sculptures, alien fruits with bioluminescent rinds, and textiles that shimmered as if woven from starlight. Eric had tagged along too, lingering a few paces behind as he examined a rack of intricately carved figurines. "This one looks like my old dog," Eric said, holding up a figurine resembling a four-legged creature with elongated ears. "Was your dog purple and covered in scales?" Liam asked with a grin. "No," Eric admitted. "But it's the thought that counts." Verena glanced over, her expression skeptical. "Why would you purchase something that doesn't accurately represent your pet?" "It's about sentiment," Eric replied. "Not everything has to be perfectly accurate." Verena's brow furrowed. "Sentimentality often leads to inefficiency." "Not if it makes you happy," Liam said, giving her a friendly nudge. "Sometimes it's worth it." She didn't respond right away, and Liam wondered if his comment had annoyed her. But then she turned to a nearby stall and picked up a small, glowing orb. She studied it intently, turning it over in her hands. "This is a Rithorian light sphere," she said, almost to herself. "They're used in meditative practices." Liam stepped closer, curious. "What does it do?" "It emits a gentle, pulsating glow that's said to help focus the mind," Verena explained. "Many red hell use them to center their thoughts." "Sounds useful," Liam said. "Do you have one?" "I did," she admitted, placing the sphere back on the counter. "A long time ago." He waited, hoping she'd elaborate, but she said nothing more. Instead, she gestured for him to move along, and they continued through the market. Liam noticed that Eric had drifted off to another stall, leaving him and Verena alone for the moment. "You know," Liam said after a few moments of quiet, "you're not as rigid as you let on." Verena raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "I mean you pretend to be all serious and formal," he replied. "But I've seen you crack a smile. I've heard you laugh once, anyway. You're more relaxed than you want people to think." "I'm simply professional," she said, her tone cool but not dismissive. "Professional, sure," Liam said, stepping around a cart loaded with shimmering metal cubes. "But also human, well, not human, but you know what I mean. You're a person. You've got feelings, preferences, a sense of humor. You don't have to hide that all the time." For a moment, she didn't respond. Then, in a tone so soft he almost didn't hear it, she said, "Perhaps I'm not accustomed to showing it." They reached a small terrace overlooking the lower levels of the market. The crowd was thinner here, the noise muffled by the distance. Liam leaned on the railing, glancing at Verena as she stood beside him. She seemed more relaxed than before, her shoulders no longer as tense. "I think I like this place," he said after a moment. "It's messy and loud, but it's alive." "You enjoy the chaos," Verena observed. "I enjoy the potential," he corrected. "You never know what you'll find or who you'll meet. It keeps things interesting." She tilted her head, considering his words. "You find comfort in unpredictability." "Not comfort," Liam said. "Opportunity. Sometimes you have to embrace the unexpected." Verena's eyes narrowed slightly, but not in anger. "You're a curious species, Liam." He laughed softly. "I'll take that as a compliment." As they stood there, a gentle breeze wafted through the terrace, carrying the faint scent of some exotic spice. For a moment, the bustling market below seemed far away, leaving just the two of them in a quiet, shared space. Liam turned to face her fully. "You know, I wasn't sure what to expect when we first met. I figured you'd be, well, more intimidating." "I thought the same of you," she admitted. "I expected someone more reckless." "Reckless? Me?" He laughed. "No, I'm just adventurous." She gave him a look that said she wasn't entirely convinced, but there was no malice in it. Instead, there was a softness Liam hadn't seen before, a glimpse of the person behind the envoy. He hesitated, searching her face. "I'm glad you're here. I know this whole trade agreement thing is a pain, but having you around makes it better." Verena's gaze didn't waver. "You're unexpectedly candid." "Maybe I'm Jay." Kiss was tentative at first, almost hesitant. Her lips were cool against his, and for a moment he wondered if she would pull away. But then he felt her respond, her movements careful yet deliberate. The world seemed to fade, the market noise, the distant calls of vendors, even the breeze. It was just them caught in a moment neither had planned. When they finally parted, Liam met her gaze, his breath a little unsteady. "Sorry, I didn't mean to." "You don't need to apologize," she interrupted, her voice steady but softer than he'd ever heard it. "Okay," he said, a small smile playing on his lips. She looked at him for a long moment, then turned back to the market below. "We should return. Eric is likely wondering where we are." "Yeah," Liam agreed. "Probably." But neither of them moved right away. Instead, they stood together on the terrace, the chaos of the market a distant hum, letting the silence linger just a little longer. Liam adjusted the collar of his jacket as he stood by the docking bay's observation window, watching the stars drift by. The cargo freighter they'd just sent off was a mix of human and red hell goods, the first joint shipment since they'd resolved the trade discrepancies. It was a small step, but it felt significant. It's strange, isn't it? Eric's voice cut through Liam's thoughts. Seeing our stuff packed up with theirs. Feels almost normal now. Liam turned to his colleague, smirking. Careful, Eric. You sound like you're getting used to this interstellar cooperation thing. Don't get ahead of yourself, Foster. Eric crossed his arms. I still prefer Earth-made snacks. Speaking of which, you've got time to grab something before our meeting. Sure, Liam replied. Let's hit the promenade. I could use a break. As the two of them made their way down the station's busy corridors, they talked shop, shipment schedules, upcoming negotiations, and the inevitable red tape. But Liam found his mind wandering to the last few weeks. Working alongside Verena had been surprisingly productive. Her initial coldness had given way to a dry wit and an unexpected willingness to compromise. They had developed a rhythm, and though it wasn't always easy, they were making progress. She's still giving you a hard time? Eric asked, as if reading Liam's thoughts. Liam shrugged. Not as much. I think she's starting to trust me. Trust you? Eric raised an eyebrow. That's a big deal coming from her. Yeah, well, I don't mind putting in the effort, Liam said, glancing down a side corridor where he thought he'd caught a glimpse of Violet skin. But it was just a maintenance tech in a Rethel-designed jumpsuit. It's worth it. Eric gave him a sidelong look. You sure you're just talking about work? What's that supposed to mean? Come on, Liam. Eric stopped at a vending unit, punched in a code, and waited for the machine to dispense a packet of dried fruit. I've seen how you two look at each other. There's something more going on. Liam hesitated. She's different. No kidding, Eric said, tearing open the packet. She's an alien. I don't mean that, Liam said, leaning against the wall. She's sharp, driven. But she's also I don't know. There's this side of her I don't think many people get to see. Like what? Eric asked, his tone more curious than teasing. Liam thought for a moment. Like the way she lights up when she talks about her homeworld's art. Or how she sneaks in those little sarcastic comments when she thinks no one's listening. She's not just a diplomat. She's a person. Eric studied him for a moment, then shook his head with a grin. You've got it bad. Liam rolled his eyes. Let's just get that coffee. Their break didn't last long. An urgent message from Verena brought them to one of the station's secured briefing rooms. She was already there, her datapad on the table and her white eyes scanning the screen. When she saw Liam and Eric enter, she gestured for them to sit. Something's come up, Verena said, her tone brisk. The latest shipment reports show a new pattern in the data inconsistencies. I've been cross-referencing the codes, and it appears someone is still trying to mask certain cargo entries. Seriously? Eric said, his voice tinged with frustration. I thought we'd fixed all that. So did I, Verena replied, her voice calm but firm. But this is a different method. More sophisticated. Liam leaned forward. Do you have any leads on who's behind it? Not yet, Verena admitted. But I've isolated the recent transmissions that don't align with official protocols. If we analyze the communication logs, we might find a pattern. Eric frowned. That's going to take hours. Not necessarily, Liam said, glancing at the datapad. We could split the work. You take the logs from the last month, I'll handle the older ones, and Verena can focus on the most recent entries. If we find a common link, we'll have something to go on. Verena nodded. Agreed. Let's begin. The three of them settled into the task, the room quiet except for the occasional tap of a stylus on a screen. Eric muttered to himself as he sifted through data while Verena remained silent, her focus unshakable. Liam tried to keep his attention on the logs, but he found his eyes drifting toward her more often than he intended. Finally, Eric broke the silence. I've got something. A repeated sequence in the data tags. Looks like someone's routing shipments through a secondary hub before they reach the main manifest. Where? Verena asked, her tone sharp. Looks like Deck 17, Storage Bay C, Eric said. But it's been listed as inactive for months. Liam frowned. That's an odd place to hide something. Could be worth checking out. Verena stood, her movements swift. Agreed. Let's go. As they made their way to Deck 17, the atmosphere grew more tense. The usually crowded corridors thinned out and the air felt cooler, as if the environmental systems struggled to keep this part of the station at a consistent temperature. When they reached Storage Bay C, the lights inside were dim, casting long shadows across rows of crates. This is it, Eric said, glancing at the console by the entrance. No activity logged here for weeks. Liam stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room. Doesn't mean it's empty. They moved carefully through the rows, checking each crate. Most of them were sealed and labeled, but a few had markings that didn't match the official records. Verena stopped in front of one particularly large container and tapped a few commands into her datapad. This one's been rerouted multiple times, she said. And the contents don't match the manifest. Eric peered over her shoulder. Looks like they're listed as medical supplies, but the weight's way off. Let's open it, Liam suggested, stepping closer. Verena hesitated, her eyes narrowing. We should proceed cautiously. If someone has gone to this much trouble to conceal their activities, they may have taken precautions. I'll handle it, Eric said, pulling a small scanner from his pocket. No need to rush in. He ran the scanner over the crate, frowning at the readout. No explosives, no biohazards. Just a lot of metal. Liam exchanged a glance with Verena. Metal? That could mean anything. Only one way to find out, Eric said, activating the crate's release mechanism. As the lid slid open, the three of them peered inside. The crate was packed with sleek, polished components, technology that looked far more advanced than the standard equipment used on the station. Verena's expression tightened. This isn't standard Rahel tech, she said. But it's not human either. Liam reached in, lifting one of the pieces. It was smooth and cold to the touch, with intricate patterns etched into its surface. What the hell is this? That, a voice said from the shadows, is classified. They all turned to see a figure emerging from the far corner of the bay. It was a tall, imposing Rahel male, his white eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. He wore a dark uniform that bore no insignia. Who are you? Verena demanded, stepping forward. That's not important, the man said. What is important is that you leave this area immediately. Liam stepped beside Verena. Not until you tell us what's going on. The Rethel's gaze shifted to Liam, his expression unreadable. You've overstepped your bounds, human. And you've been smuggling unregistered technology, Verena said, her voice icy. Explain yourself. The man didn't respond. Instead, he turned and disappeared back into the shadows. Eric moved as if to follow, but Verena held up a hand. Let him go, she said. We have what we need. Liam looked at her, confused. Are you sure? Yes, she said firmly. We'll report this to the appropriate authorities. For now, let's secure the crate and ensure nothing else leaves this bay. Reluctantly, Eric nodded. Fine, but I don't like this. Neither do I, Liam admitted. But she's right. We need to handle this the right way. As they closed the crate and locked down the storage bay, Liam glanced at Verena. Her expression was calm, but there was a tension in her posture that he hadn't seen before. He wanted to ask her what she was thinking, but now wasn't the time. Let's get back to the briefing room, Verena said. We'll compile our findings and prepare our report. The three of them left the storage bay, their footsteps echoing in the quiet corridors. Though the mystery was far from solved, they had taken a crucial step. Liam's boots echoed on the metal deck as he followed Verena through the station's central hub. The past few days had been a whirlwind of activity, each lead they uncovered pointing them closer to the truth behind the hidden shipments. Verena moved with her usual purpose, though Liam noticed she was quieter than usual. Eric trailed behind them, grumbling under his breath as he adjusted a portable scanner slung over his shoulder. I still don't get why we're doing this alone, Eric muttered, catching up to Liam. We should have a full team sweeping the place. We don't have time to wait for clearance, Verena replied without looking back. If we delay, we may lose our chance to find the source. And what happens if we run into another one of those red hell in black? Eric asked. Liam glanced at Verena. We'll deal with it, right? She nodded. We've handled worse. Just stay focused. They entered a dimly lit corridor that branched off from the main docking bays. Unlike the bustling areas of the station, this section was eerily quiet. The air seemed colder, the hum of the station's systems more pronounced. Liam tightened his grip on the small sidearm he'd been issued, hoping he wouldn't need it. Where exactly are we heading? He asked. Deck 34, Verena said. The logs show repeated anomalies originating from one of the cargo transfer nodes down there. Deck 34, Eric muttered. Always the creepy ones. Not helping, Eric, Liam said. Verena stopped in front of a sealed hatch and tapped a series of commands into the panel. This is it. The node is just beyond here. If we're going to find the source of those shipments, it'll be inside. Great, Eric said, pulling out the scanner. "I'll keep an eye on the signals. You two watch my back." Liam gave him a thumbs up. "Got it." The hatch hissed open, revealing a narrow chamber lined with storage lockers and control consoles. The air smelled faintly of lubricant and ozone, and the dim lighting cast long shadows across the room. Verena moved swiftly to one of the consoles and began typing. "I'll access the node logs," she said. "Check the lockers for anything unusual." Liam and Eric split up, each taking one side of the room. Liam opened a locker and found only standard maintenance tools. The next held spare parts for the station's automated cargo drones. But the third locker contained something different. Small, unmarked containers that hummed faintly with energy. "Verena," Liam called. "Take a look at this." She glanced over, her white eyes narrowing as she crossed the room. "What is it?" "No idea," Liam said. "But it's definitely not standard station equipment." Verena picked up one of the containers, turning it over in her hands. "These are containment units, very advanced. They're designed to hold something volatile." "That's not reassuring," Eric said from across the room. "What's in them?" "I'm not sure," Verena admitted, "but I can run a quick analysis." She set the container on a console and activated her datapad. As she worked, Liam and Eric continued their search. The more lockers they opened, the clearer it became that this node was being used to smuggle highly advanced technology. The equipment didn't match any known human or Red Hell designs, which only deepened the mystery. "Got it," Verena said suddenly. "These containers are shielding some kind of energy source. It's highly concentrated and unfamiliar." "Unfamiliar how?" Liam asked. "Unfamiliar as in, we've never seen anything like it," she replied. "This technology is from neither human nor Red Hell origin." "So what the hell is it?" Eric asked, his voice rising slightly. "I don't know," Verena admitted. "But someone has gone to great lengths to keep it hidden." Liam frowned. "And if it's not human or Red Hell, then whose is it?" No one answered. The three of them stood in uneasy silence, the quiet hum of the containers filling the room. Liam's mind raced. If this technology didn't belong to either of their species, then it raised a host of troubling questions. Questions he wasn't sure he wanted the answers to. Verena finally broke the silence. "We need to secure these containers and report them immediately." Eric shook his head. "Easier said than done. We're deep in restricted territory, and moving this stuff without the right authorization could get us thrown off the station." "Then we'll get authorization," Verena said firmly. "But first, we need to make sure no one else can access this node. I'll lock it down." As she returned to the console, Liam turned to Eric. "Keep scanning. See if there's anything else hidden here." Eric nodded and resumed his sweep, while Liam stood watch. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched themselves. The shadows in the room seemed deeper than they should be, and every small sound made him glance over his shoulder. "Almost done," Verena said, her fingers flying over the console. "Just a few more." A loud clang echoed through the room, cutting her off. All three of them froze, their eyes darting toward the source of the noise. Eric turned slowly, his scanner held out in front of him. "What was that?" he whispered. Before anyone could answer, the hatch at the far end of the chamber slid open, revealing a figure silhouetted against the dim corridor light. It was the same Red Hell male they'd encountered before, his white eyes glowing faintly in the shadows. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice low and even. Liam stepped forward, his hand hovering near his sidearm. "You've been hiding something. We need answers." The Red Hell didn't move. "Leave now. This is your final warning." Verena stood, her expression as icy as ever. "You have no authority here. Explain yourself." The man's gaze shifted to her, then to the containers on the console. "You don't understand what you're dealing with." "Then enlighten us," Liam said, taking another step forward. For a moment, it seemed like the Red Hell might answer. But then he turned and disappeared into the corridor, the hatch closing behind him. Eric let out a long breath. "Is it just me, or is he really good at vanishing?" Verena frowned. "We need to secure this area immediately. Liam, help me lock down the containers." As they worked to seal the lockers and encrypt the console's access codes, Liam couldn't help but wonder what they'd just stumbled into. The refill's warning echoed in his mind. You don't understand what you're dealing with. What did that mean? And why had he left without a fight? All right, Verena said, straightening. Everything is locked down. Let's head back and report this. Eric grumbled but nodded. Fine. But I still don't like it. As they made their way out of the chamber and back toward the main hub, Liam fell into step beside Verena. He glanced at her, noting the faint tension in her jaw. Do you think he's right? Liam asked quietly. Do you think we're in over our heads? Verena didn't look at him. I think we need more information. Until then, we proceed with caution. Her tone was calm, but Liam could sense the uncertainty beneath it. He nodded, deciding not to press further. They had enough to deal with without speculating on the motives of shadowy figures and unknown technologies. As they reached the station's main corridors, the familiar sounds of daily life, chatter, footsteps, the hum of machinery eased some of the tension in Liam's chest. They were back in the light, out of the shadows. But he knew the questions would follow them, lingering like ghosts.